America, it's time for some straight talk. You love your phone. Look at you. You hardly put it down. But you don't love that expensive wireless plan, do you? So what if I told you can keep that phone network and number 2 for a lot less? Well, this is me telling you. It's time to switch to Straight Talk, guys. Bring your own phone and get unlimited plans starting at just $45 a month on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks. Straight Talk Wireless. Only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
Herman Edwards could be talking about anything, and I want to listen on this subject that we were discussing. I don't think there's anyone I want to hear from more than him. That said, we'll get Pat Forde in here in just a couple of minutes with the latest on Louisville and stuff. But, Mike, let's have a little fun.
Yeah, let's have a little fun. Well, we say fun. We're talking about the passing of somebody, but, it's news and notes about Hugh Hefner.
Listen, when a man lives to be 91 years old and accomplishes as much as he did, I believe that while, of course, it is a sad occasion, his passing, he wasn't going to live forever. We celebrate his life. I mean, you celebrate a life lived extraordinarily significantly and interestingly, and in many cases, well.
And I'd say he lived a life. There's no doubt about that. So just a few fun facts of Hugh Hefner. Do you know who the first cover girl was?
I only know it because I read the obituary
1971 was the first. 1953, the first Playboy. I'll get into 71. Yeah. 1953 was the first Playboy, and it was
Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe. That's when he founded Playboy, $600 of his own money. Do you know where he wrote, what his first writing jobs were?
Wasn't he at Esquire magazine?
Before that.
I did not know that.
During the war. He wrote for a military newspaper.
Okay.
And when the war ended, then it was Esquire writing promotional copy. He was a promotional copywriter at Esquire.
Magazine guy, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then in 53, he founded Playboy. And then the big year was 1971. That's when he bought the mansion, the Playboy Mansion, the noted Playboy Mansion. And that's when Playboy was at its highest circulation of like 8 million. 7 million. It went down in like 2015, a couple of years ago, to 800,000. I mean, obviously, there were of the magazine, just the internet and such. Right now, 2016, the Playboy Mansion sold for half of the asking price. It sold for $100 million. Well, they were asking $200 million, and the caveat. You know what the caveat was?
He's allowed to live there till he died.
He was allowed to live there till he died. So they bought $100 million. It sold for, and he was allowed to live in it until he died. I mean, what a life.
People in Chicago are very familiar because it was a Chicago-based company, and there used to be, when you would drive down Lakeshore Drive down to like Michigan Avenue, the Magnificent Mile, the really famous part of Chicago, you would see like the Playboy Bunny on the building. The building was right there. And his daughter, who ran the company forever, Christy Hefner, was Chicago-based and all that. So people in Chicago, I think, were a little more acquainted with that. Then, of course, he moved his portion of the operation to L.A. and the mansion and everything else. So, look, I mean, that's a piece of the culture.
It is.
You can say of it what you wish. I'm not telling anyone what they should think of Playboy magazine.
I mean, what it went through in the times it went through it, from again, founded in 1953. So you have decades of, we know what was going on in the world and the country during those decades, all through, with Playboy and where it is now. It's just so diminished of what it was, understandably so. You can see with everything else that is out there, but. Man, what a life! I mean, married more than a few times, but at times.
Well, in one case, he was married to a woman who was 60 years younger than he was.
Exactly, and then ends up dating 5 women at a time that are living in the Playboy Mansion.
2 of whom were twins.
I mean, wow.
He was
different times, huh?
Different dude.
Different times,
no question about it. And then the interesting thing, the many interesting things, of course, but one of them is he dies yesterday, and the name Betty White is trending. And literally, the name Betty White is only trending because when an aged legend passes away, people start worrying about Betty White. I clicked on it immediately. There are, what is the number up to now? 22,000 tweets about Betty White. And there does not seem to have been any news about Betty White except that Hugh Hefner died.
Except that Betty White's in her 90s as well. What is she, 90? Is she 95?
I'm not exactly sure, but whatever it is, she's in that neighborhood. And as far as I can tell, the only reason Betty White is trending is because Hugh Hefner
He's
died.
95. If there is a person that should be allowed to live forever, it's Betty White. I love Betty White. And everybody, she's I was watching the Game Show Network the other day. I was watching Match Game with Richard Dawson.
I loved that
and
show.
Oh, my gosh. And she was on it. She sat next to Richard. And this was in the 70s. And she was a star then. I mean,
wasn't she married to the host of that show? Or she was not Match Game. She was married to the host of
Password?
What was the quiz? Password.
The Password.
I believe correct. I believe she was married to the host of that show.
I think you're right.
This is trivia from
my
childhood.
gosh! But she was a star then.
She was
70s.
Oh, she's been famous forever.
Oh, it's been fantastic. Fantastic.
Okay, we're Mike and Mike.
Right.
Let's move it along here because we got a lot of other things going on. And let us bring Pat Forde into the conversation. So Pat, of course, was our colleague here at ESPN for a long time now, does a terrific job writing columns at Yahoo Sports, primarily around college sports, and makes his home in Louisville. So is about as connected and as close to the situation here as you can possibly be. Good morning, Pat Forde.
Good morning, Mike and Mike. How are y'all?
Doing well.
We're fine. And you know, it's just remarkable to see what happened here. Take us through what happened from the moment this FBI investigation came out and the moment the name Louisville was attached to it. Was there any question whatsoever that Rick Pitino was going to be out?
No. I think once you read the complaint and started to figure out, oh, they're talking about Louisville here, that was curtains, because obviously the program has just been racked by scandal. And when you put together the time frame of what the FBI has alleged occurred in this particular scandal, the way it dovetails with them getting hammered by the NCAA for the last scandal over the strippers, it's just complete brazen disregard for the rules, and there's just no way Rick Pitino is going to survive another scandal.
And listen, he's the one we're going to talk about, but we want to get into how far-reaching this can be. But how do you think it ends with him? Because now I'm sure there's a fight for $44 million on this thing. I didn't know. Did you know? What's the NCAA going to say? How is this eventually going to end for Rick Pitino at Louisville? We know he won't have a job, but the money side as well, do you think?
Yeah, I quite frankly, and coming from somebody who has known Rick Pitino and enjoyed working around him for a long time, I think it takes a lot of damn gall to ask for $44 million when you put the program in position to potentially get the death penalty from the NCAA. But that doesn't mean he and his legal representation won't try. I have to think, guys, that when all is said and done, you know, if there are major NCAA violations that occurred on his watch again, that it would be very easy to fire him for cause, and it would be awfully hard to collect a buyout. But, you know, these sort of things, the legal wrangling could get really interesting on it. I have a hard time believing, A, that he would ask for it, and B, get it. But I've been surprised before. Well,
it certainly looks like he's asking for it. If you read his lawyer statements yesterday, he's going to ask for it. We'll see what winds up coming of it. Mike and Mike, Pat Forde is with us. What of the immediate future for the Louisville basketball team? This is a team that is a leading championship contender this year, despite the decommits and everything else. The future, of course, is really cloudy. The immediate future is they'll be allowed to play a basketball season this year, and they have really, really good players. Who's going to coach them?
It's a great question. It's a rudderless ship right now. There's an AD who's out on paid leave. There's an interim president of the university. There's a board of trustees that's been somewhat at war with the athletic department for several months here. So it is chaos. Nobody knows who's going to make the decision on who coaches that team. The players would like to see David Padgett, a former Louisville player, who is an assistant on this team, promoted and have him be the interim coach. But do you want somebody that's been that aligned that closely with Rick Pitino in that position? Or do you go outside? Scotty Davenport is a name. He's the coach at the Division II school in town, Bellarmine University. He won a Division II national title. He's worked at Louisville under Denny Crum and Rick Pitino. There's been some talk that he might come over and do it. Tom Crean is sitting out there right now without a coaching job, has been to a Final Four, has won a lot of games. There might be a lot of resistance to bringing him in, but I think there might also be some real appeal to him in that situation. So there are a whole lot of moving parts, and you can't say who's going to get the job because nobody knows who's going to make the decision.
Greeny mentioned, and we have mentioned, that a couple of recruits have decommitted. Number 8 of ESPN's 100, Anthony Simmons, and number 49, Courtney Ramey, have decommitted from the school. So, again, about that, you've called for the death penalty here. You know, the last death penalty we saw was decades ago for SMU. Do you think it will reach that far, and why do you think they deserve the death penalty?
Well, Golic, it totally fits the NCAA rulebook definition of where the death penalty can apply. Repeat violator, major violations. And again, the timeline of this is just spectacularly brazen. In May, when Louisville is waiting to find out exactly how hard it's going to be hit for the stripper scandal, they've got a coach involved in figuring out how to pay $100,000 to a player. A few weeks later, they get crushed by the NCAA. Banner's going to have to come down. A month after that, they've got an assistant coach arranging a deal for $150,000 for another player. If that isn't complete disregard for the NCAA rules, I don't know what is. Now, there's a lot of people that would probably be very resistant to a death penalty, specifically the ACC, which would like Louisville to continue playing basketball and like its games to be on TV and like its arena to be full and be part of the conference, and some other entities as well. But if the NCAA is really going to still have a death penalty on the books and is going to use it, then this would be a time to do so.
Pat Forde is with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. We're Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. So Pitino is a huge name, a Hall of Famer. We have other coaches who have already been caught up in this in different ways. Sean Miller at Arizona, Andy Enfield at USC, and others. Those are different circumstances with their high-profile assistants. Bruce Pearl at Auburn. What is your best guess what happens with those?
I think everybody's in trouble. I mean, all the coaches you named absolutely are in trouble, and then a bunch of coaches who haven't been named yet are absolutely in trouble. This thing could unspool for a long time in a lot of places. I think everyone in the business is scared to death right now, waiting for that call, and there's been a lot of speculation, rumor about where else the FBI has been, whose computers they've picked up, who else they're looking at. But I think Sean Miller right now is absolutely in the crosshairs, and this is a guy who's one of the real, leading lights in the business under age of 50. I think all those guys that you mentioned, they are very much in jeopardy as this thing goes forward.
So, and there is the rub as it goes forward. So you just said there's going to be a lot of nervous people, and there's going to be coaches who do things the right way who are going to be like, good, hammer all them because they're doing it the wrong way, I'm doing it the right way. So the question will be, after this settles, and at some point it will settle, whether it's with jail time or we'll find out other names or whatever, what then, Pat? I mean, there are a lot of people that say, this will finally start the cleanup of college basketball, and will this leak into college football, which a lot of people think it will. But does anything happen, or do we just wait till this calms down and then people feel they can start it all up again, trying to do underhanded things?
That's the great question. I mean, if this doesn't perform the cleanup, then what the heck is going to? Because this is bad. This is really, really bad. And again, we're just getting started on it before we know exactly how bad it is. At this point, there's 6-7 schools involved. I talked to one coach who said he thinks there could be as many as 100 coaches caught up in this thing before it's over. I talked to an athletic director who said this may be the enema the sport needs. And if it can't clean itself up after that, then why are we playing? What's the point? Or else we just need to write new rules, change the idea of amateurism.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah,
Let me hit my little ding here. Okay.
There you go.
So that's exactly where I wanted to go with you, Pat, which is if what one could look at this thing and say what it's really doing is demonstrating that the system as it is currently constructed doesn't make sense. It isn't working. It isn't what people think it is. If up to 100 different programs are on one level or another violating its policies, then what does it even mean in the first place? It's just a question of who gets caught and who doesn't. And there are many people, myself included, and I read a good column by Andy Staples, and certainly Jay Billis is a leading voice on this, and others, who think that the system as currently constituted doesn't make sense. It's not as simple as just saying, well, pay the players. There are a lot of different things they would have to do to address if they wanted to make wholesale, radical changes to the structure of big-time college athletics. But, Pat, do you think that it is a legitimate viewpoint to say that's what this is illustrating?
Oh, I think you can absolutely argue that point. No doubt about it. That there's an underground economy that exists here because there should be an overground economy that's being ignored or suppressed. I think you could certainly look, and it's way too simple to say pay the players, but there are some avenues wherein the market economy can be changed, whether it's name, image, and likeness and things like that have been discussed for a long, long time and are going through courts and all that sort of thing. But I think you look at it and you try to decide a couple of different things. If you want to try to make a change that will still keep the current model in place, maybe you really press the NBA on the one-and-done model and say, look, this is what's driving a lot of the corruption in our sport. We've got to do something about that. We've got to get rid of it. Freshman eligibility. But both of those things don't really address amateurism. So do you want to go and just blow up the whole model? That's the next step. Are people ready to do that? I still think there's a lot of resistance from the conference commissioner standpoint, from the university president standpoint, from a lot of athletic director standpoint. But by golly, when stuff like this is going on, it really forces, I think, a very serious discussion and dialogue about what the heck college sports is supposed to be.
Pat, one other thing that was brought up by two people everybody knows, one not in the game but certainly knows the game and talks about the game, our own Dick Vitale, who just yesterday, who sounds incredibly hurt by all this, but mentioned that basketball needs a czar, needs one person to oversee it. Coach K has come on this show, and he said it in other places as well, the exact same thing. There needs to be a person that runs this. Do you agree with that? And if so, how would that help? Or would it just be the person you point to when bad stuff happens?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that would help. It would depend who it is. And, yes, maybe that person becomes the buck stopper, so to speak, and nothing more. But I don't know. I think that stems from college basketball feeling like, it's such a second-class citizen to college football that they kind of need their own entity, so to speak, or their own leader. I'm not sure that really solves that much. Maybe if it's an incredibly galvanic person who can truly initiate a change, but again, they're going to have to change an entire culture of the way coaches recruit and do business. We're seeing that now. This is absolutely ingrained, and it's not new. This is basically 20 years of the way people have been doing business. Are you going to be able to change all of that and just say, you know what, we're not doing it anymore? Shoe companies, go away. Stop trying to pay people. Agents, go away. Financial advisors, go away. Can you realistically do that without changing the market economy of the sport?
Oh, we're going to put that on you, Pat. We'd like you to come back on next Thursday, and before you come on, we'd like you to have an entire new rule book done. You can leather bound it if you'd like and give it to us, but you have 1 week to come up with all new rules and present it to us on the show. Is that cool?
That's fantastic. We'll do a PowerPoint up there in Bristol. It'll be awesome. Can I get the cafeteria again?
Apple, we're definitely. It will be catered. Yeah.
Good to talk to you again, Pat. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Pat.
All right, thank you.
That's good. Pat Forde with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold.
It is hard to ignore the. Again, I don't think we're on opposite sides of if there needs to be some change, make some change. But it is just screaming louder and louder to look into it. Again, as we say, rule changes that can better this, there will always be loopholes and ways to get around it, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to do something. It's too big of a book right now that needs to be thinned out, and it needs to get into this century, because there are still rules at some places where you can't tie up your horse outside a bar. Okay, I mean, we need to move past a lot of those things,
correct,
and move into this century.
Here's the way I would describe it, and again, I keep referring to this Andy Staples column, but I think it's really very good. And the way he describes it is really very good. He describes how these rules first came about. And they were conceived, the amateurism model as we currently know it, was conceived at a time when no one imagined that there was going to be a lot of money involved in this.
Yeah.
So it was just an extracurricular activity, and they wanted it to be an even playing field. Mm-hmm. But what happened was, over the course of time, first hundreds of thousands, then millions, and now, astonishingly, billions of dollars are involved. And Pat Forde just used a perfect expression. There's like a black market now going on. There's this sub economy going on that it doesn't need to be that way. Mm-hmm. It could be brought above ground.
It can. It won't end some of the black market, but you can, as I said, bring it into the now.
Yeah, you and it's not about whether or not players can get, butter on their cream cheese on their bagels.
Right.
That's not what we're talking about.
Right.
We're talking about, should players be allowed to have representation? Should players be allowed to get some amount of money, whatever that might be? Does that then have to apply to all scholarship athletes, or is it just in the places where money is being made? Should it be a free market economy? Should they be allowed to capitalize on their likeness? One of the things that I think would help a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, is the elimination of the one and done rule. Because the most sought after players are the ones who are going to make it to the NBA, and those are the most obvious ones. And basketball is a sport where you can identify this stuff when these kids are 12 and 13 years old. So, they got a whole heap of help and a problem.
It's a daunting task.
But at the end of the day, if Pat is right, if these other coaches he's hearing from are right, and this is going to ensnare like 100 programs, then what are we doing?
And again, in 100 programs where you're talking about legal, not just NCAA infractions, but FBI being involved. There are things that happen that become wake-up calls, that become that aha moment to now whoa, something needs to be done.
Right.
Is this going to be that moment?
Right, because what you have then is you have a system where it appears you have a set of rules.
Yeah.
The people who are following them are at a disadvantage. So the people who are doing this the way you, in theory, want it done aren't competing on a level playing field, and something approaching the majority of the schools are not following the rules. So what do the rules even mean in the first place?
So then after all that is said and done, for all those people that go sit in the arenas and all those people that go sit in the football stadiums and cheer on their team, do they care?
Well,
do they care?
It's as much as what I remember having this conversation around the heat of the steroid debate in baseball, that you care, and then when the game starts, you're not thinking about it.
Right.
And that's the way I would describe it. Like, I care about this. I don't want people breaking rules.
I get it, but is it enough? We're talking about the smallest percentage of total players and schools. I know it's a little more schools, but we're talking about.
Which part do you mean? Do they care about what? Which piece?
Do they care about any of it?
That the rules are being broken?
Do they care that the rules are being? They're going to go and sit and root for their team. And you know what? Quite honestly, some of them are probably sitting there saying, well, I hope our guys are doing that.
Absolutely.
So I would imagine, I think the majority of fans and people who support their schools don't care as much. Are just like, it's good to go watch the game and root for my team, and I hope we're finding a way to be competitive.
Oh, absolutely.
As well.
Well, I don't hope that my school is cheating, but I know that I've never looked forward to a basketball season in my life the way I'm looking forward to Northwestern's basketball season this year, and neither has anyone who ever went to my school, because this is going to be by far the best team we've ever had. You are 100% right. I will not be thinking about any of this the moment the ball is tipped off.
Home isn't just a place. It's a feeling that you're safe to enjoy the things that matter most. ADT lets you take that feeling with you, whether you're at home, your business, or online. We help keep you safe with security systems, home automation, alarms, and surveillance, so you can feel at home wherever you are. Go to ADT.com to get that feeling for less than $1 a day. ADT. Home, safe home.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
All right, we are Mike and Mike. I'm told we got Tirico getting ready to go here in just a second. Stugotz, Adam Schefter, Ryan Smith, and many more still to come on a day filled with a variety of different headlines.
Could there be anything more from one to the other, having Mike Tirico on, and then the next guest to follow is Stugotz?
No, it is What's the opposite of from the ridiculous to the sublime? It's from the sublime to the ridiculous.
From Tirico to Stugotz.
Exactly right. Let's start with the sublime. Mike Tirico, who is good to talk about literally anything, will spend his weekend in one of the most beautiful places you could ever possibly be, and that's Liberty National Golf Club in New Jersey, doing play-by-play for Golf Channel and NBC's coverage of the President's Cup Thursday through Saturday. The NBA weekend, the NBC weekend coverage Saturday, 8 in the morning till 6 p.m., Sunday from noon until 6 p.m. Good morning, Mike Tirico.
Hey, guys. How we doing?
Doing well.
Well, we're trying to keep up with everything that's going on here, and candidly, it's complicated.
Yeah.
Let's start.
No kidding. It's unbelievable.
We were just talking to Pat Forde and many others about all this college basketball stuff, and I really want to get your take on that because you did so much of it for us here when you were at ESPN. I know how much you love the sport. But let's start with this President's Cup and what it is people can expect to see. I like these international competitions. I like team competitions where you get to see guys attempting shots and doing things that you will not see in stroke play events. What do we expect to see this weekend at the President's Cup?
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot of that. The international team, it's interesting because Europe has built up such a rivalry with the U.S. in the Ryder Cup over the years. The international team not as much in the President's Cup because they've played it 11 times and the U.S. has won 9 and they tied once, and the international team's only won once. So Hideki Matsuyama, Adam Scott, Mark Leishman, Jason Day, can those guys play well enough to give the international team a chance? Because the U.S. team is loaded. You've got all the young stars. You got Spieth, you got Thomas, you got Dustin Johnson, Ricky Fowler, Patrick Reed, and you have Mickelson too. He's made every U.S. team Ryder Cup or President's Cup since 1994. So I think you'll see those guys, aggressive golf, end of the season for a lot of them. So it'll be enjoyable. And the views, as you said, Mike, at Liberty National, they're incredible. People don't know it's in Jersey City, so it's right across from the Statue of Liberty. You see One World Trade Center and the Statue of Liberty from a bunch of the holes. It's as scenic a golf course as you'll find looking at the international capital of the world in New York. So it'll be a lot of fun. Good way to wrap up the golf season for 2017 for sure.
Which holes are the beer holes? That's what I always ask when I'm going to go play somewhere.
Well, Mike, it's a golf event in the New York City area. That means every hole is a beer hole.
And certainly we're looking forward to the great golf. But there is a guy there who's going to make headlines. Just wondering if he's going to play again. It's one of the assistant captains, along with Furyk and Davis Love and Fred Couples, is Tiger Woods. So, and we heard from him a bit yesterday. But what's the feel around there about Tiger? He looked like he was in pretty good shape. But again, that doesn't mean a whole lot of going out and playing. What are your thoughts on him going forward?
Right. I thought it was interesting, Mike. Somebody asked him, when you're back at 100%, can you be the best in the world? And he kind of laughed and he said, I've had 8 surgeries and 4 back surgeries. Can you ever be 100%? And that was an obvious response. No, you can't be 100% of what you got comfortable with Tiger Woods being on the golf course. He's only hitting shots 60 yards. He joked that he's hitting them straight with a no laugh from the media, but he laughed. Do you really think I'm hitting them all straight? For the first time, I think you heard publicly Tiger resigned to the fact that there's a scenario that he does not come back and play golf. He's going to try. He's going to try as hard as he can. But I think he understands that there are 0 guarantees at this point that he'll ever come back and play, let alone contend at a very high level. I think you're asking a lot. And he said it best. And I've said it with you guys before. He's in his 40s. Nobody's as good in their 40s as they were in their 20s or their 30s. So you're asking a lot. I'd be surprised if he got back to a very elite level of golf. The one thing that he does know from being the assistant captain, Ryder Cup last year, President's Cup this year, all the guys out there want him to come back and play because a lot of them are inspired by, and candidly, a lot of them are a lot richer because of Tiger Woods' presence in golf.
Again, this afternoon on Golf Channel and tomorrow afternoon and then on NBC over the weekend, it's the President's Cup with Mike Tirico doing the play-by-play. Let's get then to the NCAA stuff. We've been talking about it all morning, and again, we know how much you love the sport. I'll let you take it from any angle you want, whether it's the Patino side of this thing or where it all goes from here or what, if anything, needs to be changed so that we don't have a whole lot more days where the federal government is investigating college basketball programs.
Yeah, well, it's going to take a while because it's going to keep going. When we hear of what's out there and that here's our number, call us with more tips, more people sing, so you get in less trouble, who knows how deep that will go. And then who's going to be responsible for the reform of the sport? Can the NCAA, which had no teeth to do this and was shocked when they found out that morning what the FBI had been working on for 3 years, can that be the organization to come out and clean up college basketball? That's going to be hard. It's going to have to be university presidents starting at the highest level and saying, if there's anything untoward happening, then we're making changes within our programs. The entire structure of intercollegiate athletics has become very difficult for universities to get their arms around, plain and simple. And, yes, people are going to find their ways around and find their ways to deceive, to cheat, to get money to people. But at the end of the day, you are part of an academic institution that usually has values that are higher than let's get the best guy in here to play basketball at any cost. So it's going to be up to the individual schools to find ways to police themselves if they want to do that. If not, then you have to go to some sort of a system where the 65 or 70 Power 5 schools plus a few others split off and decide, okay, we're going to compensate players X amount of dollars and go from there. I hated that thought. I still think that there's at many of these private schools in education that's upwards of $250,000 when all is said and done. So I don't think guys are playing and giving up their soul, as some people say. You get books and food and a whole bunch of other stuff to go with it, and the opportunity to get a 4-year education, which trumps all of that. And for any of us who paid student loans over your life, that's really valuable, especially in this day and age. So I don't think guys are getting away with stealing from the players in terms of the university level. These scholarships mean a lot, and they're a big deal. But no matter what the answer is, it's going to take forever to clean this thing up. Who can trust the sport when you hear the stuff that's going on now and has been going on for 30, 40, 50 years?
And then on to the NFL, where we know what's going on, and this is a horrible question to ask, and the only reason I ask someone like you is you'll know how to make a good answer out of this. It's a very simple, broad question of what's next. What happens next, do you think, with all of this?
This week will be interesting, Mike, to see, okay, how many more players are kneeling? What are the forms of protest? What's the backlash from fans? I think something that I, in general, feel was lost in the coverage of this, there are a lot of fans who disagree with players taking a knee. That's fine. That's their opinion. Some of us believe that the players have the right to demonstrate. I didn't fully support Colin Kaepernick's demonstrations early on because I didn't really understand them. Once he talked about it, understood, and explained them, I understood a bit better. And you understand that you protest at the highest profile moment so the most people can hear what you're trying to say. Where this thing has spiraled is people have stopped listening to what people are trying to say. So the side that says, I'm going to burn my jerseys and my tickets and I'm never going to watch the NFL, that's not the point. Listen to the players who are kneeling, understand why they're kneeling, understand their purpose and their plight, become better educated. And for those of us who don't understand why people are angry that guys are taking a knee, listen to those, that people are upset that people are taking a knee during the national anthem. Listen to those fans. Listen to those people who are opposed to people taking a knee during the national anthem. Understand why. Have a dialogue. The situation with Michael Bennett and a fan who was protesting and the conversation they had, that's what needs to happen a lot more in the country. Some real dialogue, not moronic yelling at the highest level to see who could be more of a shock value commentator than the next guy. Listen, if you all want to make America great again, or if you all want to make the world a better place where social injustice doesn't happen, it doesn't start by yelling louder. It starts by listening longer. And if you can't do that, then you're stupid. Plain and simple.
Well, there you go. I knew you'd get a good answer out of a very broad question. And to finish up, I just want to congratulate you as we all go through life and hit our peaks and valleys. I know you have peaked now in life doing Notre Dame football. So I do understand that you're at the top of your profession right now.
Mike, Miami of Ohio, North Carolina, chance to get to 5-1 or 6-1 with USC coming in prime time in mid-October. Huge couple of weeks for your Irish. I'm just saying.
There's the breakdown I was looking for.
He is the best. Mike Tirico, always a pleasure. Enjoy the golf this weekend.
I will, and if I'm not with the two of you guys again, it's been fun being the third mic every once in a while as a guest. You guys have set a real high bar for class, how radio shows are done, and have been great friends to a lot of us. Many of us have woken up with you for over a decade and a half. You'll all be great, and we'll continue to watch you all and what you do. But you two together belong in that Hall of Fame, and congratulations on a phenomenal run, the likes of which we won't see again in national radio. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. That's
very
nice of you to say. The problem I have with Tirico is the one day that he filled in for me, he was better than me.
Oh, he did.
Remember that?
You actually came up when during the segment, and I'm like, no, stay there. We're good.
I didn't get to Cleveland for an NBA Finals show. My flight got canceled.
Yep.
I couldn't get out till the following morning. I got there like halfway through the show. Mike Tirico, who was doing the games that night on radio, was good enough to get up at 5 in the morning and come over and host with you. And as I'm in the car in Cleveland trying to get there through traffic, I'm listening, and I'm saying to the driver, go faster.
Yeah.
This guy's better than me.
He was fantastic.
He's going to put me out of a job.
And listen, I've done games with him as well.
He's the best.
He is absolutely the best. And I think for what he just said, and he's been such a good friend, let's send him a bobblehead. Mike, we're going to send you a bobblehead.
Mike Tirico bobblehead?
We may have a Mike Tirico bobblehead that we'll sign our mics and we'll send to him. Kirk Herbstreit's $1 million moment brought to you by Eckridge and the road to the national championship sweepstakes. Visit EckridgeFootball.com for your chance to throw for $1 million at some of the biggest games this season. Big one coming up Saturday. Here's Herbie talking about Clemson and Virginia Tech in Blacksburg.
Now for this week's $1 million moment brought to you by Eckridge. To me, it has to be the game this weekend in Blacksburg. To be specific, Kelly Bryant and this Clemson offense has shown a lot of firepower on the road in a very tough environment. But the difference between this game and a couple weeks ago against Louisville is Bud Foster in the defense. Bud Foster, I guarantee you, has worked 8 months to come up with a plan for this Saturday, this game against this offense. Will Kelly Bryant and this very electrifying, explosive Clemson offense have the answers? Because Bud Foster has an experienced defense. They play a lot of man-to-man. They're going to challenge the timing of Bryant and his wide receivers. Should be a great scene on Saturday night in Lane Stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to that game. Blacksburg, always a tough place to play. Foster always has a tough defense. Kelly Bryant will absolutely get tested at the quarterback position with that defense. We will see. So, I don't know if you looked at some have gone to 280 characters.
I don't.
You haven't gotten it.
No.
Jake,
I tried.
My son Jake did. Of our family.
He got 280 characters?
Jake, who doesn't tweet much, but when he tweets, it can be powerful. And but yeah, he got it, and he's rubbing it in the noses of the big-time tweeters in our family of Mike, Chris, and Sydney, who love to tweet. Me, not so much. I don't need 280. I mean,
I needed to retweet. You'll just retweet people regardless of how many characters they have.
I'll retweet quote. And I'll add
quote
in.
Tweet.
I don't. Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Quote tweet is called?
Sure.
Retweet quote?
Yeah.
I know it always says something, and that's the one I hit. I need 50 characters tops. Because I don't do all the hashtags. Like, I just read the one from Jenny. I mean, she had the amount of hashtags people have to take up.
I think she has 280 characters.
Oh, I do as well, because she had a whole statement, and then she had these ungodly hashtags that are an incredible. Her one hashtag is one word: amateurism works for those that follow rules. And I hate doing that because you have to really kind of find out where the word ends, and I'm not a big fan of it. So I definitely don't want to read 280 characters. I hate this idea.
I tried. If you go to my Twitter right now, at ESPN Greeny, you'll see. I wrote, "This is me testing to see if I now have 280 characters. Let's see how far I can go before it cuts me off. Looking pretty good. Maybe I act." And
that was it.
And then it cut me off. I don't have it.
All right. Would you like it?
Yes.
You would?
Of course. I've told you this before.
I think it's a bad idea.
It is harder. It would be harder to write a 6-word. We've had this argument before. Yeah. I mean, over 18 years, you've had every argument.
Yeah.
It is harder to write a 6-word essay than to write a 600-word essay if you want it to be good. Harder. Not easier.
I would much rather write the 6-word essay.
Yeah, but yours wouldn't be good.
I'm getting a C on either one of them. So I'd rather do the 6-word and be done with it.
The legendary example of that, we had this argument. That's the only way I remember this was years ago. The legendary example of that, Hemingway wrote 6 words.
Yeah.
For sale, baby shoes, never worn.
Well, there you go.
Right?
Okay.
That's better than any 600 words you could ever write.
By the way, our biggest argument, you want me to always put the toilet seat back down.
I think it was actually the Batman thing. We'll be right back.